Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Zoom meeting. I will off the bat say that I am still getting used to this platform, and so we will figure our way through it together. I do want to give folks a few more minutes to join us. I think
Hi, Kate. This is Josh.
Hey, Josh.
Kate, this is Melissa Emden with ALCC.
Oh, Melissa, I'm glad you were able to join us.
Sure, no problem. Sorry, my login name looks like my son's name because he must be using his Zoom account. So it's me, it's not Owen.
So there are a few different ways that we can do this. And one allows everybody to sort of be equal participants, and the other one will default back to sort of a panelist view. And I think that we may go back and forth between the two a little bit this morning.
Sounds good. Yeah, typically I have used these where you can see other participants.
Yes, so I think on the bottom of your screen, if you're on a computer or tablet or through like not a call-in, but on your phone as not a call-in, on the bottom right, there should be a button that you can click to say start video if you would like to. Hi, Eric.
Hey, Kate, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Hi, Kate, it's Catherine.
Hi, Catherine, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. How's the baby?
She's good. She's napping right now, but we might see her in a little bit.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
How old is the baby?
She's 5.5 months.
Excellent, congrats.
Thank you.
That's like the best time. That's when they start really moving and scooching and doing all kinds of stuff.
Yes,
Wow.
she's trying very hard to crawl, but she's not there yet. She just gets angry.
I had one that crawled really early, and I had one that just rolling over seemed to be a problem. I was like, I don't think she's ever going to walk.
Yeah, she doesn't. My Zoe does not roll over very much now. She seems to just have gone straight to
Crawling.
Wanting to crawl, but not doing it very well.
She'll figure it out. They all do.
Kate, this is Lynn.
Hi, Lynn.
How are you this morning?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
Good.
I don't see Jim on yet.
I do not see Jim. I haven't heard from him.
I talked to him this morning, so he.
Yes.
I know he's going to be here. Oh, he's calling my cell phone. I'm going to mute myself.
This is Caitlin. Is my mic working?
It is.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, this is Josh. I must be in some setting where I haven't figured out how to add video. I left the meeting and rejoined, but yeah, my start video option in the top is not working. So
This is Melissa. I'm having the same issue. I usually see like a share video link or like button on the bottom, and I'm not seeing that for some reason. Not that everyone needs to see me, but I'm just.
We'd like to see you.
And I'm going to have my microphone muted for part of the time because I'm also managing first grade teaching. So just bear with me as I attempt to multitask here. I might try to log out and log back in again and see if I can get that option.
I don't have the video option either. This is Catherine, but you know what? I'm really cool with that. I don't want to be seen today, so.
So I wonder if it's in how I set up the meeting.
Yeah, both Malcolm and Jim are having troubles with it, so I'm going to resend them the invite. Which we do Zoom calls all the time, and they don't typically have problems, so I don't know.
Can you guys hear me now?
Oh, Malcolm's in. All right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. My video's not working. I don't know if it's part of the remote workspace that I'm on or, but I'm just on my phone.
That's fine.
Okay.
So we'll give it a little bit more here to get Jim on the line. I have the PowerPoint and can work through some of what he was going to talk about if we really can't get there. There he is.
Hey, it's Jim.
Oh, he's coming in as. All right.
Is that a beard? You got a beard going on, Jim?
Looks like you're muted, Jim.
Let me see.
Jim, you're muted.
Oops.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm growing it out until I can see my granddaughter again. So now you know how long it's been since I've seen her. How many people we got? 1, 2, 3. I see Kelly's there. Yeah, pretty good numbers.
You can see who's on.
I can see the names. I see Ted, Eric, Corey, Lynn, SOOO19776. I don't know who that is. Josh. Now we're up to 16, looks like.
Nice.
So how's everybody doing?
Good.
Good and snowy.
Not too shabby.
It's not bad here. We got a little bit. It's just the opposite of the last one that came through. You guys are getting all the snow this time.
Yeah, we've got 15 inches.
Wow.
I can still see the pavement here.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, go for it.
To respect everybody's time, I think we should go ahead and get started. And if more folks come in later, we can take care of that. Just a few housekeeping things. As I said at the very beginning, my name is Kate Strebe. I convene this group of the Colorado Tree Care Sector Partnership, and I'm glad that you folks are with us. I am still getting used to some of this facilitating meetings on Zoom as opposed to just participating in them. So I apologize for the video issues and other hiccups that we may encounter. We're going to focus mostly today on resources to help your businesses through this COVID-19 pandemic, and the impacts on businesses because of shutdowns and stuff like that. We want to make this as interactive as possible. We do have a couple of presentations or a presentation set up, but please feel free to ask questions as we go, or to add questions that you hope that we can maybe answer. You can either type that into your Zoom chat, or you can, we'll have a couple of times for questions. So if you want to interrupt and ask a question as the presenters are going, I'd ask that you sort of try and do that by the chat. But if you can't figure that out, go ahead and interrupt us. And then we'll have time for other questions that we haven't addressed at the end. I also want to start off the meeting, though, with an update from Josh on the status of our apprenticeship program and how that's going and where we are with that.
Cool. Thanks, Kate, and everybody for being on the call. And I'm, for one, really glad that we're continuing to move forward with the initiatives and the work we've already done through the Tree Care Sector Partnership. I think that when I check in with the apprenticeship program, we just had a meeting about the curriculum yesterday, and I think about where are we going to be on the other side of this, and the need for our industry to have a way to train and grow our people is not going to go away. So we may find ourselves in a position where we have an even stronger need for a robust, training, platform vehicle, which would be apprenticeship. So just a status update on where we are. We are almost finished with the first year of related learning. The section on pruning was scheduled for the end of March, and we elected with COVID to postpone that. Working with Lynn Vossler, Lynn, you've been great, keeping us going with that and the curriculum development. So we've decided to push off the first year pruning related learning to the fall, where we would then link it up with the second year of pruning. We just felt like that was a better strategy because we haven't quite figured out how to do the instruction based on the social distancing right now. And we also felt that, typically our summer months in our industry, we don't have a lot of bandwidth for, other things or pulling people out of production. So we wanted to be, just considerate of the realities of our industry with that. So where we are is we're planning to finish up year one in the fall, and then we're planning out and working on the curriculums for year 2 and 3. We have a grant that we've been utilizing to fund that curriculum development, and that is due to finish in I think May, June is when we need to have everything finished. So Connie's been working with TCIA to get the curriculum as they develop it and then pass it out to the subject matter experts. We've got Dave Sexton has joined as an additional subject matter expert, and he's leaning in. So that's really, really good. And, it's an evolving process. So we really want to keep some momentum. I think there's some opportunities for us to look at addressing how do we get the next cohort of apprentices in. and and some of the business model aspects of covering the costs of apprenticeship. Those are all things for us to do as a sector partnership as we keep moving forward. So that's an update. Happy to answer any questions I can or open up discussion. Bueller.
Kate, this is Lynn. You said that you saw some extra interest lately in the apprenticeship.
Yes. Probably since the beginning of March, we've had 5 inquiries come through the registration page at Front Range for the folks who are interested and looking for more information or to enroll in the apprenticeship. Now, these are individuals who are not employed already, and my instinct on this is it's probably because of the job situation in the state, with so many things being closed down, that people are looking for more employment opportunities. But there are 2 folks who I'm continuing to pursue conversations with who might be interested in becoming employed with a company and entering into the program.
So I'm guessing we're going to see more of that with the unemployment the way it is. We're going to see an uptick. And so is there a plan in place, or, I don't know what you're looking at as far as being able to screen those individuals and then find employment with companies?
Yeah. So as always, I'm trying to make sure that anybody I refer on has a real interest and somewhat understanding of what tree work actually is. But I think this really comes down to the businesses and what, at this point, my read on the situation is that nobody's actively hiring. Of our companies with the arborist programs, with the apprenticeship program. So I'm sort of sitting on the folks who are expressing interest right now, but we'll have to see where our businesses are and what their capacity for new employees is in the coming months.
And I've been involved in these kind of pre-employment training programs before, and it's not a bad idea to start a wait list.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Because I think as things change, it is going to open up, and having a wait list for us to be able to backfill into our apprenticeship program would be a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And I think, my expectation is things will change fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. As they have in the past month and a half. And so hopefully we will have an uptick that we can plug folks into in the near future.
Hey, Kate, this is Kelly. Hey, quick question on how have we begun soliciting like the companies to make a commitment for the number of apprentices that they want to add to this next cohort?
We have not.
Yeah.
Lynn, do we have, we had a goal of 12 for the last cohort. Do we have a magic number this time around?
Yeah, it stays at 12 with the tuition the way it is. So we would have to take a look at changing tuition up and increasing it if we had less people. So yeah, I think it's really smart for us to start planning ahead for, I'm looking at a schedule that may start November this year. And so, so it'd be really smart for us to start getting the word out for an additional cohort.
And one thing I would say on that to our business folks is I think this will work best if we are able to increase the number of businesses who are offering the apprenticeship.
Yep.
So if you are running into people you know who run a business that is not yet but could be a sponsor for the apprenticeship program, to bring that up with your contacts and just feel them out, and feel free to refer them to me to talk more, or to Josh to talk more, or directly to Cynthia if they are ready to start that process and get registered.
And this is actually a really good time for them to start getting their apprenticeship registered. You know, if things are quiet for them, they'll have some time to work with Cynthia to get that off the ground and registered way before, so they're not up against the wire in starting class.
Right. And if folks are looking to hire new folks to meet the summer demand, that could be a good point at which to be trying to hire for an apprentice as well, because there definitely can start the on-the-job learning before the cohort begins in the fall.
Lynn, based on I'm sure you're probably hearing a lot of different things, and I would anticipate that as a result of this pandemic and the recovery that's going to be needed, there's probably going to be funding made available for these apprentices, or at least we could anticipate that coming forward. Would you think something like that might happen? I mean, there already is some funding. I would think it might be increased, particularly for services that have been identified as essential.
Yes, I did just this morning see additional funding come out for apprenticeship. So let me look into that. You're exactly right.
Okay. And then the other thing is my understanding is with these apprenticeship programs, most of the money that goes to the businesses to support the education requires that the apprentice hire is unemployed and then is brought into employment, or that they get preference. Is that true as well?
Now say that again.
My understanding is that, for example, if a tree company wanted to bring in an apprentice, what they need to do is register as someone that's offering the apprenticeship program, and then before they employ them, bring that person in as an apprentice.
Yes.
So that they're increasing the labor force.
Yes.
And then more funding is available for those types of employees as far as reimbursed for tuitions.
Right. And actually, we're in a really good spot right now. I mean, with 20% unemployment looking, I mean, this would be a really sweet spot to be able to move folks into employment from unemployment. And you're right. That's when the funding is available.
Yeah. So I think probably as the sector partnership, we probably should put together maybe a plan on how we're going to get that message out to employers, to let them understand that we're going to be bringing new people in that are interested in apprenticeships. Make sure they register before they do that, and then make them aware of the anticipated funds that are coming in to help support tuitions, et cetera, for that person. Because if they hire them and then they bring them in, are there funds available for that as well?
Well, that's where the the rub is a little bit, and there's a lot of I guess it depends on where you are and where the employee is in terms of funding available. So because a lot of the funding is going to come through your workforce, your county workforce office, and so that's dependent upon the funding available through them. But what's clear based on our experience is that if you can show that sort of like course of events, like, hey, we're a sponsor of registered apprenticeship, we hired this person with the intent of them being an apprentice, then that funding is more readily available. Okay. Meaning versus if they were an existing employee, and then they get registered as an apprentice, it's a little, it can be. It just depends on the workforce center and what the funding they have available is. So the best scenario is to show, hey, this person wasn't working and they've now entered into this apprenticeship program, and that's where the most funding's available, as far as I understand.
You can make it part of your hiring process that before you bring them on board, you send the so once you've just send the applicant to their local county workforce center, and they can register with their local county workforce. And then when you finalize their hire, that's where the county will be able to, depending on what's available, provide some funding support.
Yeah.
Great. Good stuff.
If there aren't other questions or thoughts on the apprenticeship, I do want to pivot towards these resources that Jim and Eric have put together.
Do you want to help her transition into us now?
Yeah.
Okay. I make sure I can do this now. I gotta fire this up. Share my screen first, then fire it up, I guess, right? Share. And
There we go.
now I gotta start it though. What do you guys see? I can see myself. I can't see what I got up here right now.
We see your screen.
Okay.
So if
So
you go in the bottom right to present the PowerPoint.
there we go. Okay, are we ready? Is that up?
Yep.
So I worked with Eric and Malcolm. They run an insurance agency. As a result, there's a lot of people that are calling them about the different aspects of the business that are going on, and thought they've done a couple of seminars online with TCIA. We put a lot of different resources up for you that are from TCIA, but thought we could kind of give an update to everybody, and then also ask questions about additional things that you might be needing to cope with the situation. So I noticed this morning that, or yesterday, Polis kind of identified the response phases that are going to come out of this thing. Obviously, right now we're in the urgent phase, which is stop the spread. That's where all the stay-at-home and everything is going on, and beefing up our medical supplies and trying to get testing where we can and working with all that kind of stuff. And we're going to be rolling out of that shortly into what the next phase that he's calling the stabilization, which is likely to last, he said, anywhere from 2 to 10 months, possibly longer, where they're going to continue to have social distancing restrictions. They're going to restrict the size of gatherings and things like that. And basically, until we get a vaccine, is probably going to be some form of restriction. Based on the fact that we are an essential service, a lot of our companies have been out working through this. So I think you probably have developed certain things in place to deal with the restrictions. But what I thought I'd try to do is try to simplify basically the situation that we're in, and that, this pandemic has given us a new set of risks to have to deal with. I mean, put quite simply, the first one is the risk of any one of us becoming infected, and what that could mean for us. And then the second aspect is, once you're infected, infecting others, infecting other employees, infecting your clients, infecting vendors, subcontractors, the general public. There's a litany of anybody that you interact with. And a lot of the social distancing restrictions and things like that are going to be put in place are going to be focused more on that than it is you individually. I mean, one of the reasons you wear the face mask like this is to prevent you from infecting people. It's not so much going to protect you, but it's protecting you from infecting others. As I said, if you can see this, it says trees are good on the front. Don't look at it as an inconvenience. Look at it as a marketing opportunity. So anyways, what we try to do is put together some ideas on this. So what are the outcomes going to be in the event of an individual gets infected or one of your employees or multiple employees? One, you're going to have lost productivity. You're going to lose skills on the job. Maybe your key performers out for 2 weeks, or your key performers are out for several weeks. You're going to lose revenue. You have potential litigation. Somebody might accuse you of infecting them. Supply chain issues are things we're going to have to deal with. Potentially death. Multiples of the above. So there's many negative things that are going to come out of this, and contributing factors. One of the things I'd recommend is you look at the CDC. They've got some great information. I'm going to kind of go over it at a very high level. But essentially, they identify 3 different exposure levels: high, medium, and low. The high is basically people who are regularly interacting with people that we know are infected. And as a result, they have a high opportunity to become infected from other people. Medium is people that can potentially be involved, but they have opportunities to do the social distancing. From time to time, they may have to come in contact with it. Most of the work that I think tree companies are doing now probably fall into that medium range. There may be some times when you're in the high, but for the most part, you're going to be in that medium range. So the recommendations that CDC is providing for that type of activity are things that you should be looking at when you read through their recommendations. And then the low is like someone like me right now. I'm sitting at home on my computer. I'm the only person in the room. Not going to be interacting with people that are infected that I know of, and the possibility of the virus transmitting to me is very low. So the mitigation strategies, particularly for the medium, is one, infection prevention measures. And we've talked, you've seen them online. There's all kinds of proper hand washing, with things that you want to make sure that you're requiring your employees to do. PPE that you believe is needed for particular exposures that they're going to be in. Equipment sanitation. There's a litany of things. One of the things that we recommend is kind of putting together a list, maybe a daily checklist on things like this for people. Address where your employees are gathering, or if they need to gather, or come up with alternatives to prevent them from gathering. I know a couple of organizations that no longer have their people come to the shop, so they have them. They send out messages over text where to meet and what things are going to be done, and briefings are done on the job to limit the amount of exposure. Customer vendor interaction is another one to look at, how you're interacting with your customers, how you're interacting with your vendors. Entrance to your facility. They're going to continue to allow visitors to come on during this next phase, and if so, are there going to be specific requirements? Emailing out your proposals. Areas that are touched by visitors and things like that, are they being cleaned on a regular basis? Securing your facility. So after hours, there's no way that somebody can get in and do anything, or potentially do that. And also maybe controlling the door for access for visitors. Potentially you may not have had a locked door before. This might be a time where you're going to have to do that, so that people have to announce themselves before they enter the building. Sick pay is another one. Obviously, if someone's sick and they have the virus, you don't want them coming back in and infecting other people. So making them aware that, your policy is, if you're sick, stay home, and how long they're going to be reimbursed if you want to be doing that, or what their alternatives are. Prompt identification of people that are infected. Be open with your people and say, look, we want to make sure everybody has a job when they come in the morning. If you aren't feeling well or things like that, please let us know. Go in and get checked. Things like that, and then keep them away until they recover. Some of the things that I've heard from different organizations is they're staggering shifts. So instead of having everybody come to the shop in the morning and pick up their trucks, they might do staggered shifts of every half an hour when they're sending out groups, so that the different teams aren't interacting, so that you're not transferring from one to the next, limiting that exposure. Another one that they're doing is rotating shifts, where you got 5 on, 5 off, 5 on, 5 off as far as days go. I've seen that in a couple of different municipalities around here. So again, you want to have all your people in one place at one time to limit that spread. Another thing I've heard some people are doing is splitting up their star performers. Maybe you have a crew of your top-notch people for specifically very critical type removals or whatever. Maybe you postpone those for a while, and for the time being, you split those top performers up and have them work in different locations. So again, you're not losing all of your highly advanced skilled people at one time in the event that someone does get infected. Encourage people to work from home when they can, for as long as they can. Obviously a lot of the office staff can do that, but whenever you can, promote that. And then some of the things that you may be doing, if you haven't had your employees work for a while and you're going to bring them on, and there's specific trainings that they can do to prepare to come in that you might be able to do in an online way rather than do it in the typical safety meeting tailgate type fashion. You might be able to do it online where they can go through and learn maybe the new safety requirements on how to clean the vehicles, things like that. Those are types of things that you can put online or do a Zoom meeting like this. So again, you're limiting that exposure as much as you possibly can until we can get to the point where we're starting to move into the next phase. This resource is extremely good. I don't know, has anybody looked at this online? It's put together by OSHA and the Department of Labor, and it's the steps all employers can take to reduce a worker's exposure. Most of the stuff that I just talked to is in there. It goes into much more detail, and I think before you start putting your policies together, I'd highly encourage you to read through the entire document. It's pretty lengthy, but it's a pretty quick read. I mean, a lot of the stuff makes sense, but it also helps you put together a plan for how you're going to respond to this stuff, and basically gives you an outline for the different types of information you're going to want to cover and present to your employees so that they are put into a situation where you're taking care of them as best you can to prevent the infection and prevent them from infecting others. One of the things you also want to do is, a lot of these risks are employee dependent. Like an office person has a different risk than someone who's out, than someone who's a salesperson, etc. So look at their risk profile independently. So daily exposures for their potential infection sources. Obviously, a salesperson is going around in multiple different places. They may be interacting with more. You may have a crew that has to work within 6 feet. Their exposure is a little bit more. Is the exposure going to be intermittent, or is it going to be continuous? Does the job require the person to work within 6 feet? Some of the more difficult removals and things like that, that's a possibility. There's other jobs as well. The age of the worker, obviously they've talked about that. The people that are elderly people like myself fall into a different category. And then other outside factors. This is one that's kind of going to be difficult, and you're going to have to rely on your employees. But there are people that live with people who are in the high-risk category. For example, if your spouse is in the medical profession and they're working with this stuff, and that employee's interacting with a high-profile person every day or high-risk person every day, that's something to think about, to make sure that they're reinforcing and that they're also doing the regular hygiene and things like at home. I know that a friend of mine works at a nuclear facility, and he had a roommate that was working in the restaurant industry. And when this started, they required him to move that person out of his home because he was intimately involved with the management of the nuclear reactor. And his job was at such a high level that they didn't want the risk of him being exposed to people that have potentially high impact. So that's a little bit extreme for tree work, but that's the type of thing that is coming into play now with this pandemic. And predisposed health factors. There's a whole list of those in the CDC talking about the different things that people might have: diabetes, asthma, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, as again, it's dependent. It's independent of each employees, so their risks are different, and just so that they're thinking about this as they're working on a daily basis. And again, one of the reasons you wear the mask is not to protect yourself, it's to protect the people that you're working with. That's why you wear the mask. So anyways, this is that guidance paper that is posted on a thing. We'll make sure that there's a link to it on our website. Again, I highly recommend you go through it, read it. There's going to be a lot of things that I think that you'll pick up from that as well. And I think with that, are there any questions? Hopefully we move on to the recovery phase soon. Eric, you want to take up on communication?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm going to share my screen, Jim.
Okay.
And
so I got to stop sharing.
You got to stop it, yep. All right, thank you very much, Jim. Really, when we're looking at all the different things that Jim went through, probably the biggest key that we've talked with clients and tree services about are simple fact of communication, right? There's communication in everything we do, but especially in a time of crisis, communication is very key. And it needs to be strategically figured out within your company from your management, the messaging, and then actually getting response back from employees and outside vendors. But I like how Jim mentions that right now we're in this, incident command phase, basically. Let's make sure we get through this immediate issue. So key partners that we want to make sure we're talking to, obviously internally with our employees, our team members. If we use subcontractors, how are we working with them and communicating with them? Any of your customers, if you're not communicating to them how you're actually doing your work and following the guidelines that are recommended, strongly suggest sending out a communication directly to them and saying, this is how we're helping protect our employees from being safe and your properties and our customers from being safe. So those are definitely things that need to go out from a communication standpoint right away. In most small businesses, that communication director, that position is the owner, but it doesn't have to be. If you have someone that is better at communicating a message or delivering a message, whether it be through a video message or a written text or whatever it might be, appoint a communication director to handle all the communication, both internally and externally. Without it, people look to different people within your company and don't really know where to go to get the most up-to-date information and also send the right message out. So communications director by title is a very good thing to do. Now, the messaging that you want to say needs to also be consistent, and that's where the leadership up front needs to happen within your company. This is how we're handling it. This is what we're going to tell people. This is how we're going to do it from a social media standpoint, from a written standpoint, maybe even down to the sign that's on the door. So getting on the same page about communication, especially now, obviously is huge. I don't need to really belabor that much more, other than there are things that are changing nonstop with this issue. So people that are part of your leadership team need to be listening and paying attention to the new things that are coming out. The slide that Jim opened up with on Colorado's governor's latest release there of the information was just this morning that he read about it and split it into this PowerPoint. So things are changing and evolving, and up-to-date information is coming all the time. So people that are responsible within your company for that leadership communication role need to have their eyes and ears open and be willing to listen and hear the messages that are happening out there. And not only that, just make sure there's an open communication from your employees to deliver any messaging back and forth. So the communication piece clearly is going to be a big part right now and during the recovery, as we start bringing people back to work and we figure out how we're going to work safely and do all of that. So communication is huge. We all know that. So sick leave, Jim mentioned it. It's a risk mitigation tactic, definitely, and certainly is one that now more than ever we need to be more flexible than we were before. We cannot have a sick leave policy within your organization that makes people feel like if they don't show up to work, they're not going to get paid. Therefore, they're going to risk spreading the disease, spreading it around to people because they need to come in to get a paycheck. So now more than ever, you need to be super flexible with your sick leave. When you have a bigger organization, that's harder to do because you have more people. And obviously, you're going to fear that people are going to take advantage of it. But understand that at this time, being as flexible as you can with sick leave is key. Now, I did want to put up here the Families First Coronavirus Recovery Act. This is part of the CARES Act that was passed a while ago that mandates a new sick leave policy that you have to be aware of for employers, both private and governmental employers under 500 people. There's a new poster that needs to go up. We'll put a link in this because obviously it's backwards for you guys right now, but a new poster that needs to go up and a notification that needs to be sent to all of your all of your employees about the new sick leave policies. And really what this basically says is there's an additional 2 weeks of paid sick leave that you have to provide if someone's if someone is infected with COVID-19, caring for someone that's infected, or staying at home for a child that's out of school or something like that. There's some requirements and some different values on the payment of what you need to pay that individual. But it is now part of from the federal government, a part of the employment law that you must follow. So I don't want to belabor sick leave or direct HR policies here right now in this presentation, but it is something that's new and it has just popped up. And the last point on that is they also have included 10 additional weeks of unpaid leave if, again, there's certain criteria of them caring for sick individuals or family members. So that's all part of the new Families First Coronavirus Recovery Act. Now, one key thing that Jim kind of talked about is when we're looking at the risk management from business practices, we need to start planning, if we haven't already, we need to start planning for a reduction in our workforce. The guidelines that we've been giving out is plan for a 40 to 60% reduction in your workforce. That's a big number of people that won't be showing up, and it could be for a number of reasons, whether they're sick themselves, whether they're actually, caring for someone else, whether they are scared and don't want to leave their house, whatever it might be. You need to start planning for that reduction in your workforce. And how you do that is obviously in each of your departments, there is a minimum number of employees and people that you need to have working at any one time to do the job safely. So you need to take a look at within your company, what's our minimum? What can we absolutely scratch by with bare bones minimum number of employees to make our job, to complete our job successfully. And like Jim said, that this definitely could be identifying key people or skills within your company. I think a lot of organizations have people that may be irreplaceable at the moment and don't really think in the foresight of if Bob Smith is gone tomorrow, what are we going to do? So now's a great time to stop and think about it. If Bob Smith is gone, how are we going to handle that? He might be the best operator on this piece of equipment. Who can we train or get at least comfortable with so that they can operate it safely, and whatever that might be. So identifying people and that have the skills and the skills that are necessary to complete your work is critical right now before you get to that 50% of your employees being gone stage. Now, including that is talking about your essential work, right? The TCIA ISA joint statement, you guys have talked about that in the past, what defines essential work, but basically making sure that you understand what you have in your work backlog, what jobs you have coming up, and what equipment's needed, and again, what skills are needed, so that if and when you do have a reduction in labor, you know exactly what jobs you can get to, and it's not a scramble, and it will reduce the stress on your management, your leadership team, and will reduce the stress on the employees because everybody knows these are the jobs that we have lined up. These are the jobs we're going to get done. This is the equipment we need. It just helps make things run so much smoother in a time of worry and frustration and fear that we're going through right now. So if you haven't looked at the joint statement and defining essential work and all of that, that's a broader conversation that we didn't want to really get into right now. We can have a discussion on the question and answer part of it, but certainly looking through your jobs and deciding which ones may be deemed essential is critical. I do want to bring in Malcolm on the last 2 bullet points here, and then we'll open up to questions. Malcolm, do you want me to just advance the slides, or do you want to share the screen?
Yeah, feel free to just go ahead with your screen if that works.
Yep.
I mean, I feel like we've all been pretty fortunate, obviously, with arboriculture being deemed as an essential occupation, but Eric and I just wanted to touch on unemployment real quick. It seems like it's almost inevitable that we're headed towards a recession down the road. So if we do get to the point where we need to consider laying off employees, there are some good resources for you guys. And a lot of this information is on the Department of Labor website, on the Colorado Department of Labor website. All I really did was search the unemployment with the COVID resources as well. So wanted to make sure that if you don't already have a positive mindset about unemployment, that you do going forward, because this is really a good resource to help employees make sure that they're continuing to be able to pay for their expenses through both the unemployment wages and then also with the COVID-19 with the CARES Act that allows employees to get an additional $600 a week or a pay period is a good resource for them. So making sure that employees understand that this is a good resource for them, and that you can kind of help walk through the application process with them. And the application process is pretty simple, and there's a step-by-step flyer, I think, on the website as well. But essentially, employees just have to collect their pay stubs, tax information, verify work history over the last 18 months, and then apply with their payment dates, their request for the payment dates that they want to receive, and then register with the local workforce center. So it's pretty straightforward, but I think it's really would be helpful for you as the employer to be helping employees kind of walk through that entire process, and then communicating with them obviously the whole time to make sure that they understand that you're just doing this to help them out in the long term. So Eric, I don't know if you have anything else to touch on that, but.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is unemployment could be a good benefit for you right now. It's not a way that a lot of people want it to go with their employees, but if it works or if you need it within your company right now, use it. You might have a higher rate next year, probably will, but it's going to be a lot cheaper to go this route than having to find new employees if they go get work somewhere else. So that's the kind of the mindset that we want you to take with unemployment, is it might be a valuable resource for you. Like Malcolm said, it might be the right thing for you during this time. Might not be something you want to do always, but strongly consider it right now if you need to. We need to reduce some payroll.
Yeah, and there are some additional resources like tax credit on, I think it's up to $10,000 of payroll per employee if you do have to lay them off or furlough them. There's also the work share program and the small business loans, the payroll protection program loans as well. So a lot of those resources, again, are on the Department of Labor website. If you guys have any questions on it, I can kind of walk through that stuff with you a little bit. So I read that COVID-related unemployment doesn't come out. I'm not sure in terms of that. I do know as of April 12th, they said that the claims are not being accepted yet. If it's not coming out of an employer's account, that's great. I'm assuming that's referring to the $600, but you'd still probably have the normal unemployment. Okay, gotcha. Well, that's good. So yeah, then even it's even a better resource for you. So this this is a quick one just on the insurance standpoint. A lot of companies we've been hearing have had employees switch to driving their own vehicles to work, or a one employee per vehicle policy in place because of COVID-19. So pretty important to make sure that obviously, well, you're reducing your risk of the employees contracting COVID-19, but increasing the liability on the employee's end of driving their personal vehicle. So Eric, if you want to just click through all of them real quick. With the employee's auto, their primary policy, so their personal auto policy, is going to act as a primary if they're in an accident and being held responsible from a liability standpoint. So you want to make sure that the employee does have their own personal insurance policy and that you're checking that the limits are adequate. And making sure that the employee is letting their insurance company know, their personal insurance company know, that they're using their vehicle for business use, because if the personal insurance company finds out that it's being used for business use without notifying the company, the claim could not be covered, and then obviously you as the business would be held responsible. So it's a pretty standard coverage. Most people have it on all their policies, the hired and non-owned liability coverage, usually with $1 million limit. So if the employee's personal auto policy does get exhausted or decides not to cover it, the hired and non-owned liability would then kick in. And then one important thing to consider is that employees have an understanding that that hired non-owned liability policy is only for liability and does not offer coverage for the employee's vehicle itself. So if they get in an accident and there's no property damage or bodily injury to others, and it's just damage to the employee's vehicle, there's no coverage for that on the business policy. So you want to have a written policy in place, establishing driving record or checking in on driving records just as you would for a business policy, establishing how you would reimburse for things like gas and damage to the vehicle if something were to happen to it, and then also verifying the proof of insurance. So if you guys need help with the written policy, feel free to reach out to us, but that's something you could build into your fleet safety program as well with this change in operations.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Malcolm. I think that is a great quick overview of those topics there. I'm going to maybe stop the share of this right now, and we can open up to question and answer. Kate, do you want to facilitate some of the question and answers, or how should we do this at this point?
Yes, I would be happy to facilitate question and answers. If you have a question, you're welcome to type it in the chat box. Most everybody is muted, but you should be able to unmute yourself on the left-hand corner of your screen if you would like to ask your question that way. If there's anything that anybody presented on that you have follow-up questions for, or if there's anything that you're running into with your business that was not addressed today, we would try to answer those as well.
This is Josh Morin. I'm just curious, just across the country, and hearing from some different small businesses about the sick leave mandate in the CARES Act. It sounds like this is basically a new paradigm for all business, that that sick leave is now mandated, and I just wonder, moving forward, as we operate as businesses and talk about policies and benefits for employees, you know, what we should be planning for, which is basically to say, hey, everybody gets 2-week, paid sick leave. That's just, federally mandated at this point. And, the leave of absence, which are really, things that would typically be laid out in a company handbook. So yeah, I'm just curious what's going on out there on an industry-wide level. How are people embracing it, or is it, going to be viewed as a stopgap for the next year, or does it look like it's just it's there to stay?
Yeah, Josh, I'll jump in. From what I know, is not, like a lot of people, not much on the deal. This new act, it does seem like it's going to stay. It doesn't sound temporary. So I feel, and what I've heard is being consistent with, hey, 2 weeks of sick pay is kind of how you are going to need to handle this into the future. In our firm, we're actually, before all this happened, we started revising our handbook, and we're using just the term PTO, paid time off, for everything. So I need to verify at my own end make sure that I can still just lump it in as a total PTO number and not have to delineate between sick days. So I don't know. But it does seem like it's not temporary on this new plan. And it is I'm just looking again here, Families First Coronavirus Recovery or Response Act, which we can email to everybody if you haven't seen the actual document. But great question.
Yeah, because I mean that's an interesting. It really levels the field. Like if for example, hey, if it's within guidelines to interpret sick leave as PTO, that's going to be a massive shift for a lot of companies to say, hey, listen, when you get hired on, once you've been onboarded, you're going to qualify for 2 weeks PTO, which is inclusive of sick leave. And I think that's just something interesting to contemplate in terms of an industry. I think the sector partnership, we exist to look at and work together to kind of address the workforce issues that we're facing. And certainly these new acts present some new opportunities and challenges. And so I appreciate you speaking to that.
We're planning to keep our sick leave with the FFCRA separate from our regular sick leave, because that just goes through the end of the year. So anything related to COVID-19, we were using that FFCRA sick leave separately. We're not changing our whole policy.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and if I hear more, I'll let you guys know. So you said, Randy, you said that it was through the end of the year you saw?
Yeah, December 31st is what that applies for.
There you go.
Cool.
I think it's like April 1st to December 31st.
Okay. Thank you.
I also had a question come in through our question and answer, which maybe Josh, you could speak to, but this is a question of how often we need to be reporting to the government site for the apprentice's progress. Whether that needs to be monthly, weekly, or quarterly.
Yeah, I think that would be a good question for, for I forget his name, but he works with Cynthia, and he's the one that administers that ONET database. I would say as a good practice, because most apprentices are going to be logging hours on a weekly basis, or tracking that to stay as current as possible. So if you're keeping track of that in a spreadsheet, I think it makes, from an employee side also, makes most sense to keep that as current as possible. So if that's every couple weeks or once a month, because like these topics, if an employee is registered in the database and they're an apprentice and something happens and they leave, they have a vested interest in making sure that their hours are still logged in that database, because the nice thing is that once you're in that database, you can stay in that database. So if you shifted companies to a different place that also offered apprenticeship, you wouldn't lose those hours. So I think there's value in staying as current as possible, but that just depends on each individual sponsor, and it's probably a technical question that Cynthia's office could answer. You're muted, Kate.
Yeah, Zoe woke up and we're being a little noisy over here. Corrine did share the contact information for David Risser, and that should be in your chat box. I'll also try and make sure that I send that out with minutes and hopefully a recording from today's presentation in the next few days. But this is David Risser is the person who works with Cynthia at the Department of Labor, who should have an answer for that question, sort of from the official answer. Do we have any other questions? Anything else that has come up that folks would like to talk about?
This is Josh again, and this is sort of circling back. It's not necessarily in reference to what Eric and Jim and Malcolm were presenting on, but in terms of the apprenticeship program, Jim and I had a good call with TCIA, talking about developing a more robust process for identifying and qualifying existing journey workers within each organization. I think some of the perception or reaction from companies has been, how do I identify the journey worker, and is there a standard process for that? And so I just wanted to, give everyone an update that the TCIA does have some things in place, and they're working on making a more robust journey worker qualification process. I think Jim, or anyone else, if you're having conversations with potential sponsors, companies that are interested in this, and they have questions about identifying journey workers within their organization, we've got something in the works that should be coming out, and we're working on that. So just wanted to speak to that, because I think that's something that's come up a number of times from both just presenting the information about apprenticeship and then talking with individual companies and entities.
Thanks, Josh. Here's Zoe as a little brightness for your day. I don't know if you guys can see my video, but since you guys got to walk with me through most of my pregnancy, here's the little ball.
Yeah.
He is adorable.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any information on the payroll loans for small businesses and how that's working?
Yes, kind of, and based off of personal experience through our agency, but also from what I've followed in the last couple of days, I believe the PPP, which is the payroll loan program that you're speaking of, actually is, if it isn't out of money yet, it's going to be really soon. There was like 350 billion, I think, is what it started with.
I just read that it is out of money now.
Yeah, it was going to be coming soon, I thought. So, sorry. They're trying to get an extension put through, but that's being held up right now, I guess, at the federal level. I do know of a few businesses that have received their funds already out of the program, but most still are waiting, from what I understand, if you've already applied.
So if you have applied and you have not received your money, you could follow up with the bank that you applied with. They have a 10-day turnaround window to get that fully processed. And there's a little, that's not exactly 10 days from when they receive your application. But I would imagine that for the most part, if you've got an application in, that you should be receiving those funds within the next 2 weeks, if not significantly sooner.
All right, thank you. I was just wondering, has anyone had any experience with it, and is it pretty easy?
With our application, you're applying for a loan. You have to give a lot of information, and it's all dependent on your bank too. The bank that we use is our small, local bank that we do our other business banking through. Even though they know us as a business relationship, we still had to give them a bunch of information. All that said, it wasn't super hard to apply, but we haven't heard back yet. That was last week that we had submitted everything in. So obviously, Kate, like you said, hopefully we were in and we'll get funding, but I don't know, with the money being out, I don't know what they're going to do, if it still will accept applications, or if that's just completely done until there's an extension. I don't know how that will work.
All right, thank you.
I will say, like everything else with this COVID-19 stuff, especially coming from the federal government, it's changing rapidly. So if you have not got an application in and you do want to get an application in, I would just kind of check regularly, because the information and the requirement, it's all changing sort of on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Anything else that folks would like to talk about?
Kate, this is Melissa Emden with ALCC. I just wanted to let folks know that we have a bunch of resources on our website at alcc.com/COVID. I'll post the link in the chat. Lots of information. We've also hosted 2 webinars on COVID-related topics for businesses. Those are available to members and non-members. If you're not a member of ALCC, you'll just have to log into our website by providing your information, and you can access those webinars. Lots of good information, very similar to what was shared earlier today, but a lot more in depth. And our association obviously covers multiple aspects of the landscape industry. So, we've got members that, may not necessarily consider what they're doing is essential. So we have some good resources around essential services and template samples. If you have folks, you don't have a letter, your employees don't have a letter that they're carrying with them to deem them essential. There's some templates available on our website. Just different things like that. Lots of resources to the Department of Labor, OSHA resources, just lots of stuff. So I'm going to post that now, but just wanted to let everyone know that if you're looking for more information, we have some on our website.
Wonderful, thank you. There's also a lot of information on the TCIA website. And it has been really helpful for me to sort of have somebody else curate all of the changes that are going on. So you don't have to search through quite as much on your own. So that's the TCIA website. And I will try and get this information sent out to you folks as well through an email. If there aren't other questions or topics that folks would like to talk about, we can give you back the extra 15 minutes. And I appreciate you taking your time out of your day to sit with us and to share your experiences with each other and to continue to find our way through this complicated reality that we find ourselves in now.